Hi guys. On a previous one of my videos, when I was talking about how to really maximize the scout event, someone was talking about how they really liked that I was talking on how to really maximize the event. So I thought, why not make a little video where I talk about 10 things that you could do to really advance in soccer spirits. I'm going to start by the most obvious and go down to the more advanced. Of course, if you know the basic stuff, you could pretty much skip away half the video. It's going to be very basic. So the very first thing is going to be when we're looking at the special stuff. So when I'm talking about special stuff, I'm talking about all these elemental stuff. So the first thing you're going to really notice is early on, you're going to see special goalkeepers, and you're going to see what we call the penguins. Now, I know the first thing we're going to do when a real noob is we're going to sell the special goalkeepers. Hopefully by now, you know you should save them, hoard them, and wait for the perfect player and a perfect moment to use them. But the penguins too are actually very valuable. The formula for their evolution has been changed a few patches ago, and they don't require elementals, and the cost has been lowered. Now, it's honestly very efficient to just keep them and evolve them because they're going to allow you whenever you want to max out a player to be able to do it very easily. On top of it, since this now stacks to 99, it's really easy to max them out, and there's a second use for this, who will be on one of my last points. The second point is going to be when we talk about draws. I know it's always very tempting to spend all your crystals and all your friendship points on draws. The thing you need to know is that very often we're going to get some special draw events. For those who didn't know, I think it was 2 days ago, we got a 1.3 time mileage event, who meant that for every 11, or let's say 10 to make it rounder draws, it counted as if you did 3 more, making it much easier to get mileage. And I know friendship points event are less common, but when they do hit, the amount of draws they require you to do are ridiculously high. I remember I think the last one required around 150,000 friendship points to get all the rewards, and if you didn't use friendship points, you had to do crystal draws. Crystal draws were pretty much equivalent of 100 friendship point draws, but it's still pretty hard to max out those events, and those are usually the events that involve them mailing to you goods. I think there was a leader pushy and an art book once. They don't come out too often, around every 3 months, but it's pretty good to keep them, especially for a rainy day. They don't give GP anymore, so you really can hoard them. It won't make a big difference. Another tip is when we come to transcends. I know a lot of people are always going to tell me we need to max out our team before we look at managers. And my answer to that is no. Actually, it should go the other way around. Because early on in game, all of us are going to have an original team idea. Then we're going to get legend. There's going to be new stars. We're going to figure out exactly what we're doing in game. And we're going to realize that we want to change comp, except we don't have the resource. And if instead of that, you decide to get the stamina reducing manager, such as Hansel or Anastel, who can be found in Scout. Of course, there's also going to be Sigmund, Ingram, there's going to be Marineko, Lucy, and you can switch these for a bunch of other players to give stamina. The free one is Geralt, and for the last one, it's pretty much up to you. And if you do that, you're going to make much more GP, much more gold early on, and you're going to be able to catch up to your friends who've actually been playing longer. So it's something that is underrated, but is actually much more powerful than people seem to understand. Because, for example, when I farm compared to a new player, I get double the amount of stamina, I get extra stamina, and I get extra draws with extra gold. So all of that accumulates quite fast. This is one of the reasons why I have 29,000 GP, who can pretty much buy me any player max sub right away if I decide to go scouting. My gold value is low, but that's because I was rolling stones. I can get it much higher if I really need to. Now, another thing who I think is kind of important is a lot of people don't fully understand in the space-time Coliseum how the schedule works. All they think is, well, we got the elementals, they'll switch as the weekend match, and there's sometimes these funky yellow matches who appear, and some matches we could only do when we were young. Well, yeah, the under, I think, rank 30 matches, they don't really matter right now. Now, the first thing you need to do is the limited matches, except for the XP ones, you should try to always do them, and that's fairly simple. But there are two matches who tend to be extremely underrated by the community. And that would, of course, be the Penguin match, because this match, once again, can give you a huge amount of XP for, well, I have stamina reduced, but it's a very cheap match. It regularly costs 8. Now, the 6-star rate is quite bad, but the 5-star is surprisingly good. And of course, we're going to have the elemental match, who some people don't fully understand at the beginning, is the match where you can get the materials. But if you actually farm them hard enough, you can start getting a decent amount of the special goalkeepers. I would say around every 120 draws, you can get a leader. Of course, you need the boosted chances and all that stuff. On the players, you need those little clovers. Some managers will be able to help you too, but it's a decent way if you really need that one special goalkeeper and you're desperate. Got a small chance of getting it. I mean, I farmed it once or twice. I did spend a little bit too much on it because they were a special scout at the time, so that's kind of important. Talking about special scout, just notice that depending on what you're looking at, it's going to be worth different events. For example, Wolf Time doesn't have this mark, means that only these ones work for the event. Now, to go to my next tip, is going to be something very simple. I know a lot of people don't do this and then get stuck in Colosseum. Especially when you're doing Colosseum of Despair, you see a player you've already played against before, and you're telling yourself you know the skills. Well, actually, especially the higher you go, you're wrong. Many of the skills are going to be changed specifically for the free Colosseums, honestly. So, especially in Colosseum of Despair, this is going to be very visible in higher ranks because you're going to be able to see Isillas who heal by base 25%. You're going to see some higher DR values. You're going to see a lot of changes in players who are not even supposed to have DR and get a skill who give 40% of it. Some skills are even going to be removed and changed by other stuff. So you actually want to read specifically each one of the skills in PvE content. Now, on my next tip, keep talking about the PvE. A great advice you're going to notice is in this game, Dimension Stones are live. Why? Because they can force buy you the legend you want. There's some other funky stuff you can do with it, but until you've gone to pure endgame, it's what you want to do. So what you're usually going to do is you're going to try to go as high as you can in Colosseum of Despair, and this is actually where the highest value is going to come from, is Colosseum of Trials. But for Colosseum of Trials, what you should actually do is first not just try to follow them linearly, because sometimes you'll be blocked on a certain stage and you're going to be able to advance to a further one. But what you could also do is ask people for help. A great example of this will always be the 4-1 to 4-5 matches. Why? Because even with an extremely weak team, if you actually borrow a Vonchi and we show you the backline you need to run, these become ridiculously easy. So asking for help from the community and asking other people to show you a few tricks will help you a lot achieve much higher COT values. And as you can see, the more you go up, the more the Dimension Stone and the rewards go up. Ideally, you should always try to hit 35 just because there's a leader, a 5-star, and a Mera who all some extremely powerful rewards. Above that, it's more for endgamers who just don't want to farm gold and are lazy and other stuff like that. Next thing I would say is this is actually not even in-game. It's actually going to be go on the read it. Try and read it usually once a day in the morning and check the Facebook page once every 2-3 days because there's very often going to be events that are not showcased in game. Sometimes they get some pretty cool rewards. For example, there was one a while back who was show your mono team with the highest amount of chains, and they gave us, I think, 200 stamina. Sometimes it's 50 crystals. It's just easy stuff for posting one picture. And sometimes on the Read It, we're going to tell you stuff like, for example, the Korean codes, who there were this weekend, who were giving you 200 gold, 200,000 gold, and some 4-star rare stones. And sometimes it's some even better rewards, but they're time limited. So you always want to check that. And now let's get to the more high-level kind of tricks. So the first one I want to point out is on Spirit Stone combination. Now, I know that people are usually going to tell you it doesn't matter what you use. But I'm going to show you 2 stones that are pretty much going to show you it actually does. Now, the rule when, especially you're making it unique, is just stick anything and care about the color about the center one. And that is where it's wrong. Very often, we've noticed that if the center one is an offensive stone with offensive subs, it's going to create a new stone, irrelevant of what one you choose, even if it's a force combine, is going to create a stone with offensive subs. A very easy example of this is going to be I burn a will of Metatron and 4 ignition catalysts to make this. As you can see, this is a goalkeeper stone with dribble, critical rate, action speed, critical damage, and penetration. Now this is not what I want on a goalkeeper stone. And as another example, I did again the same thing when I created this stone. This was using some more dribble-based stones, and I got 100.8 dribble. So you actually want to check what you're combining because it might affect the subs. Now I know it's questioned by the community, but this is a trick. And also when powering up, if it doesn't work for around 15 times, pause it and restart it. It tends to increases your odds of success, especially when you're doing auto. I mean, it's already painful to start to see all your gold go down. Another trick is a lot of you have already realized that special training players is pretty much a requirement to go further. But the thing is, you're trying to sacrifice 5-star players to be able to power up your main team. Now, this is honestly a very bad idea because 5-star players can now be released to create special transcend power-ups. And there's a whole speech about that later on, but that's going to be following my next point. So what you should actually do is go towards your 4-star players that you get from draws, you get them from event, you get them from achievement, get them to level 40 by using all of the penguins that you haven't thrown before. It's usually going to take around 16 to 18 penguins to get someone to level 40, sacrifice another 4 4-stars, and right there you have a 5-star material. Repeat 5 times, and you can transform a 5-star into a 6-star with never actually sacrificing a 5-star player who you might later on realize you need, change, or then say, man, if only I had transformed him into transcend materials. And the last tip is on transcends. Now, I know this is something that's a little bit complicated. They've added something new in the store for crystals to transfer them. It's honestly pretty bad. But how do you do when, for example, you receive a 5-star player who you've already maxed powered up? Now, my example, of course, would be Isilla. Why? Because I powered her up 5 times. It's very simple to see right here. Actually, I have 5 of them were actually leaders, but then I got her transcend. It's a long process. But what you're going to do when you get a 6th Isilla, you're actually going to take Isilla. You're going to use a rainbow elemental on her. This is going to make the 1 6-star, 7-star, level 70, 160 Isilla. The only thing is you actually need to unequip her from your team. It doesn't make a big difference. And you're going to get 5 copies. Now, out of those 5 copies, 5 are materials that were disassembled, and 1 is going to be the extra copy you just got. Now, when you retrain her, you're going to give her 4 of the fake copies and the new one. The trick is that copies that were made by disassembly cannot give super power-ups, while the original ones can. So you're losing 1 power-up that wouldn't have given you a super power-up. So it doesn't matter what happens to it. But since you're there, you have an extra copy of Isilla. Why do you care? Well, you care because now you got a copy you can release. And this is how I already have, where is this? It's in the Whirlwinds. I already have 10 Master Yosu. I was just looking down, I did a bit of draws, and I got 5-6 players that I already max transcended, max superb, so I just transformed them into Yosu after giving them the transcends, because if I ever decide to do a transcend transfer, I can also do that at the same time, plus it gives them clovers, so I really lose nothing in doing this. See, it's a way to abuse the system that BB stopped us from de-building and rebuilding our players to force all our players from having at least 5 transcends, special power-ups in case we had 5 transcended, then through leaders. See, this is how you can find a few little tricks. If there's any other cool tricks you want to point out, any other thing, again, I was just trying to think of 10 tricks that might be interesting. I think those were pretty good. Have a good day, guys.